That was awesome. That was awesome. Some 0xMusic to start the spaces. Hey everyone, I hope everyone's doing well. I think people are trickling in here.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining.
So
guys.
great to be able to talk to you
Pleasure
guys.
to have you.
Likewise.
Awesome. So we thanks a lot, guys. Thanks Electric. Thanks Crypto Pianist. It was great, or Pianist. It was great to meet you guys in New York a couple of weeks ago in person, and obviously love to have like a kind of 60-minute-ish session here. It's going to be recorded, so probably can kind of kick off pretty quickly here in case people will trickle in, but they can always catch up afterwards as well to the recording. So I don't want to hold you guys for too long waiting. Again, thanks a lot for coming on. It's Room 110 here, one of our early sessions. We are just a group of kind of enthusiasts in both the NFT and crypto space, organizing weekly Wednesday spaces, focused on a variety of topics, but one major focus for us is building bridges between communities, right? And the way of doing that, in our opinion, is to organize spaces for people that are not yet familiar with certain projects. We believe that a lot of spaces that you hear on Twitter are kind of by the community for the community, and it's kind of hard to break into a new project if you are an outsider, right? And we're trying to change that and provide content that kind of gives a very good quick overview of the project and the founders, but also dives a bit deeper into the mechanics and the topic behind the NFT throughout the session as well. So we'll try to cover a bit of both. Try to bring our friend Lonewig back up. So our backgrounds are very diversified. I'm more on the financial side, not so much of a creative person. Wake, on the other hand, is a much more capable person than I am. He will talk more about the in-depth aspects of the music NFTs and the music space. So we kind of hopefully touch on a variety of aspects here today. That's probably enough on ourselves for now, and just wanted to kind of kick off with maybe a couple of minutes on your own backgrounds. I think some people will be familiar. I certainly am, but I think you have pretty intriguing backgrounds, not just musically, but also kind of professionally. So we'd love to hear a bit about yourselves before we jump into 0xMusic specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say, we absolutely love our community, and we're so thrilled that, you, Lone Wick, and other members in the community are doing this. And it's kind of not surprising given how helpful you guys have been in terms of onboarding new people that join the 0xMusic fam. So I'm not surprised that the core theme of the project that you guys are doing is to build bridges, and I absolutely love that. So just wanted to start off with that. So my name is Electric. I'm one of the co-creators of 0xMusic. Crypto Pianist, myself, go way back. We've known each other since we were 3 years old, actually. We grew up in India. We were neighbors there, went to the same school, and moved to the US in the early 2000s. So both of us started off in financial services. I did engineering in undergrad and worked at an investment bank, like most engineers these days. Did that for a couple of years in New York and London, and then did an MBA in Europe, and then moved to Asia for a few years and moved back in around 2015. So I like yourself, Ways. I also come from a financial services background, but also have always been involved in music. So Crypto Pianist and I actually started off a band when we were in about third grade. I started off on the guitar and him on the piano, and then I moved on to the drums, and then he switched to the guitar. And then that's where our musical journeys kind of started, and then we've always been involved in the space, and I'll let Crypto Pianist talk about it a little bit more. But in terms of our journey to crypto, I think myself, I got into it in early 2017. I got into crypto, and saw a couple of ups and many downs, but really got into NFTs early last year. So I think around January, February last year, I really began to get into NFTs. And obviously, we gravitated towards music NFTs and saw that there's an opportunity to do something a little bit different from what everybody else was doing. So that's my background. I'm going to hand it over to Crypto Pianist to talk a little bit about himself.
Hey, yeah, I'm Crypto Pianist. Yeah, thanks for the intro. And by the way, I love the concept of this podcast. Right, building bridges. It's absolutely fantastic, and I second everything Electric said. Yeah, so yeah, just a quick background about myself. In a nutshell, I'm a software engineer and a musician. So I'm both of those things. And at various points in my life, I was either a full time musician or a full time software engineer. So and I, and for the past many years, I've been basically, playing a lot live. I would say, like pitching in for ad hoc bands here in the local New York music scene. Just playing in a lot of venues. Also, just producing music on the side. And then, of course, what I do to actually make money, because music, as many of you know, is a hobby that seems to take an infinite amount of money from you. So at the other end, I do software engineering and things like that to actually try to fill the faucet, so to speak. So yeah, so really 0xMusic for me was a confluence of these two disparate but at the same time very similar fields of software engineering. And we can talk about this more, but really I think the area of opportunity that I identified was that music theory is actually based on very fundamental mathematics, and mathematics is better represented in software engineering than a lot of the sort of traditional ways of representing music, but sheet music and so on. So that was really sort of a TLDR into my sort of the sort of USP, if you will, or yeah, or just the sort of headline as to how I kind of got into all of this.
That's awesome. Thanks for the background, guys. And I think that background is super helpful because it does explain quite a lot about the kind of project that you ended up creating, like the combination of math and kind of crypto interest plus, obviously musical interest since you were very young. So it's kind of a natural evolution once you hear your story for the first time. So it's thank you for the background here. I think before we jump into very detail, I just want to go kind of the basics of 0xMusic as well, right? It's a collection of generative audiovisual DJs, which are kind of NFTs. It's a collection of 777 NFTs on the Ethereum blockchain. It's CCO, so it means you have the rights over the NFTs that you hold. And I'd like you to just to explain a little bit what the NFTs themselves do. It's effectively creating an infinite number, or somewhere close to infinity. I don't want to go into discussion on what infinity is, but a very large number that will outlive humanity in any case. Infinite number of tracks that are different every time you press play on the NFT, right? I think that's a fascinating concept. They're structured around 8 different types of DJs as well, of different rarity. So I think it's a very innovative one. You launched on, I believe, the 2nd of February this year. So very early, I think, in terms of this type of project launching. So it's quite unique, and I think still is very unique as well in the space. So curious about how that idea came to being early on in your minds, and then what led you to actually putting it together as well. So you can speak about that for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I could take a stab at the second part of your question, which is yeah, how the idea came to be. So it wasn't at one moment in time when the whole idea came together. Rather, it was many moments over the course of mine and Electric's life that sort of how this all sort of came together. So kind of like a Slumdog Millionaire kind of analogy where different pieces of the puzzle sort of came together at different time. Uh, if you haven't seen that movie, that analogy was probably lost on you. But let me try to piece it for you now. So I guess the first moment, the first piece of the puzzle was I would say during really my childhood. I was always pretty frustrated with sheet music. I always felt the notation wasn't very easy to read, and you know that you're sort of, my piano instructor would always tell me, hey, it comes with practice and so on. But really sort of sight reading, which was really what I had to do very often. Like I just show up in a gig and I was given a piece of sheet music and I had to play it. I mean, of course I would do it, but I always found it very cumbersome. So that was sort of, so part one. Part two, I would say, to the 0xMusic journey was during a course I took on interactive music at Columbia University, and they taught me the software called Max MSP, which for all you geeks is basically is basically just a software where you assemble a bunch of boxes together, and these boxes can create sounds. So essentially, what you're doing is you're creating decision trees. So it was really my first foray into programmatic music, and it really kind of opened my eyes. Because it made me realize that there are other ways to represent music. So that's number two. Moment number three, I would say, was in Bonnaroo. So Bonnaroo, for those of you who don't know, is a music festival down here in Nashville, Tennessee. And this was the first time I was going to a music festival. And of course, I didn't realize that my phone would die. And by the way, if you ever go to a music festival, just know that your phone's probably going to die very early, right? Um, I mean, I know battery life's improving these days, but how many phones can actually last 4 days? And back then, I certainly didn't have a very good phone, and it basically died in 3 hours, which was expected, I guess. But it was a bit of a rude shock for me because I had 4 days to go, and there weren't too many charging stations and so on. It was quite a hassle. So initially, it was very unnerving, but what I eventually told myself was just kind of just let it go and just enjoy the moment, enjoy the music, and that's what I did for 3 or 4 days. I didn't actually charge my phone. I actually just went to every show, and that was a very very kind of spiritual. I don't know what the right word is, but it was a very very deep experience for me. Let's just say that. And I think it was during a Fish concert, or I forget. So Fish was closing out on day four, and it was, I think, during that concert when like a thought occurred to me, and I remember thinking this thought was like, what would it be if like art actually destroyed itself? Because we're actually so used to kind of looking at our phones so much, and music is a very very passive experience, but there I was in Fish, like in a Fish concert, actually just enjoying it, right? I had nothing else. I had my couple of my friends with me at the time, but I was just absorbing all the music, and I was really really feeling it, and it was a very very active engaged experience. So that was sort of a moment in time when it occurred to me that, hey, what if there could be art outside of music festivals, right? Because music festivals, like if you actually think about it, is a form of scarcity, right? You have to be there at the event to actually experience it. But what if there was this idea of like art that destroyed itself, like in more traditional media, right? Because I mean, back then it was pretty much like Spotify and MP3s and things like that. um, but I had this thought, but then I kind of I remember speaking about it with Electric at the time, but we kind of went nowhere with it, uh, because yeah, and really for what I later realized was a limitation in Web two. So the next moment I would say arrived, and really I would credit Electric on this one, is basically we had a conversation, and I mean, he was an NFT degen from pretty early on. Like Electric, by the way, is the quintessential NFT degen. He loves JPEGs. He loves collecting. I mean, I love it too, but I really, you'd be hard pressed to find someone uh, as much in the know as Electric. So speak to him for any alpha, by the way, and not just for 0xMusic. He knows what's up. Either ways, he introduced me to the space. I didn't understand it, but then he kind of kept telling me, and he kept persevering, which you should when you're explaining NFTs to someone who doesn't really understand it for the first time. Persevere, just explain it, and be patient. And then he was patient, and he explained it to me. And then I think we started connecting the dots over that conversation. It's like, hey, remember this idea you had of this creating kind of digital scarcity. Like this is something that's actually achievable now. It's just that the technology wasn't there, and that was really I think I would say the final kind of culmination moment where it all came together. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but I wanted to give you all the full context for it.
No, that was super helpful, actually. Super helpful, interesting origin story as well. I loved it. Actually curious how, obviously some of the aspects of the project, you didn't need Web3 for, I suspect, right? Or the blockchain per se. So I'm curious what Web3 and NFTs allowed you to do that, or how were they the trigger to actually create a project that you might not have been able to do under a kind of Web2 non-blockchain type environment? Just curious to hear your thoughts there too.
Yeah, I mean, so like if you think about it, right, Spotify has 60 million songs or something. Um, and I think the longest album on there is maybe 8 hours or something, right? One 0x DJ can play, basically an infinite number. I mean, it sounds kind of stupid to say infinite. And actually, if you've noticed on the website, it says 1 billion songs in your wallet. We thought long and hard about it. We thought of saying trillions of songs in your wallet, but I think like most people can't really comprehend really large numbers. So we figured it's more easy for people to understand if we say billions of songs. But just to give you like a perspective, um, a single 0xDJ's playlist is several orders of magnitude longer than the age of the universe. So like you could play it for like a trillion years and listen to far less than 1% of uh, of the total repertoire, and something like this is basically just completely impossible to do on any sort of service where you record and store the music on some sort of a database, right? So I think from that perspective, this project would not have been possible. So the whole concept of art that destroys itself isn't really possible if you have if this was based on Web 2. Um, so besides this, there are like very unique aspects of Web3 that allows us to have like a much more deeper connection with our collectors than we thought is possible in Web 2. Just the being able to speak to the community. I don't know if some of you are aware, but the revamp of the website was actually spurred by a community member. He helped significantly in writing the copy and stuff like that. So even forming bonds with the community would have been much harder to do on Web 2 than in this sort of an environment. And also, it kind of aligns the interest and allows us to kind of explore our creativity together, and which was one of the visions for the project, right? So yeah, we minted the collection in February, but since then, our goal was to take the community on this creative journey over time, and I think that sort of thing is only possible in this sort of setting, where we release the MIDI feature, where people can explore their creativity in ways that we didn't imagine. Then the song minting feature that allows them to immortalize some songs, and then obviously the masterpiece, which is going to come later this year, where the community itself comes together to work as one. So all of these unique aspects. Actually, this is not even to mention the 0x moments, right, where all the NFTs play the same genre of music at specific days in the year. All of these distinct parts would just not have been possible on Web 2.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree, and I love the different features as well of like the moments and being able to mint your own song to immortalize effectively at least one of those trillions and trillions of tracks, right? Like, funnily enough, if you have like an infinite number of tracks on one NFT, it's kind of an argument to only buy one effectively, right? And I'm kind of joking, of course, but I'm just curious. The question coming from that is there's obviously different types of DJs, and there's effectively 8 different genres with different names like Handel and Bach and Sin City, etc. So I'm curious before I hand it over to Wick, my last kind of 2 questions here are what was the inspiration for those 8 types of DJs. I'm not sure if I've seen it anywhere, and why ultimately 777 NFTs? Because that was an interesting number and a much smaller collection size than was common in those days. So I found it quite interesting, and pretty smart as well to go with a slightly smaller size or much smaller size than the typical 10Ks from those days.
Yeah, I can answer the second part of the question, and I'll let Crypto Pianist talk about the first part. In terms of why we went with 777, there's a couple of things. Like, one is when we're creating art, we want to make sure that the art has sufficient heterogeneity. You want to make sure that there is sufficient diversity in the visual aspects, because in terms of the audio, it was sufficiently diverse. But in terms of the visuals, we wanted to make sure that each piece was distinct, and that was super important to us. The second is more focused on the community side of things, because we wanted to make sure, and we didn't really care about having a massive community with tens of thousands of members. What we wanted to do is to have a very, very engaged, tightly knit community that's that's kind of founded on the core principles that we thought were important, for us and for the project. One is to actually love music, and second is to want to help people within the community, help people outside the community, and allow them to really experience this journey. And we thought that having a smaller community where people who came in were truly interested was the way to kind of grow a world class brand down the road, and to kind of maximize our opportunity and our chances of achieving a longer term vision, which is to to kind of pioneer a new way for people to experience music. And we can talk about that a little bit. But we thought the first step in this process was to create the right kind of community that shared the same kind of beliefs as us. And because of that, I think, and also even from an economic standpoint, the more supply you have, uh, the prices often kind of suffer, and especially in a bear market like this, with a lot of supply, you'll see prices going down. And at the end of the day, yes, collectors are investing in it because they love the art and all of that. But there are, of course, certain collectors who will invest in it because the financial aspects of that. And this isn't necessarily a cheap kind of product. Any other product in the Web 2 world where you're paying hundreds of dollars for, or thousands of dollars, you expect to see some sort of clear value and return. And we wanted to make sure that the collectors actually saw that sort of return, and that we value and understand that they're putting their hard-earned money towards this project. So that's something that we are grateful for and that we appreciate.
Yeah, I can speak to the first part of the question. So the eight DJs and how it came about. So really, each of the DJs are inspired by either artists or musicians or actually albums and moments in time. So I can speak to a few specific examples. So, but really, the kind of background here is each of these kind of inspirations. When I was coding this, I wanted to actually uh, more than just a hat tip to these inspirations. I actually wanted to kind of more deeply integrate uh, these inspirations and call it out. That was really like the foundation for a lot of these DJs. They they don't just borrow from these artists in terms of a general kind of style, but they actually integrate certain aspects of their style. So let's just take an example. So we know four out of the eight DJs for those who are here. So let's start with DJ Handel. So Handel, as some of you may or may not know, was fantastic, one of the greatest musicians from the Baroque era, right? So Handel, uh, he was, I would say, one of the pioneers of like counterpoint. Bach certainly took it to another level, but Handel certainly had a lot of kind of fugal passages. Certainly, when you listen to the Messiah Oratorio, which is really an epic, I would recommend anybody to just put on Messiah. It's just beautiful, 15 minutes of music. Uh, you know, it's really pretty mind-boggling. So, but so Handel basically, so counterpoint, for those of you who don't know, is basically a form of music that's very, very procedural, right? So at its core, it's a rule-based system. There are things like, the first beat has to be consonant, and then, by the way, consonant means, the interval between the two notes, or the two voices as they called it, has to be these many intervals apart. Like five is an accepted number, but four makes it dissonant. So it's very, very. It seems very pedantic. And if you've ever written counterpoint for any musicians here, uh, like it often feels like, why am I doing this? And then you sort of go through the exercise and you follow these rules, and then when you play it, you're like, wow, that actually sounds pretty beautiful. I'm glad those rules exist, because it actually is as a framework for creating, music that, at least in the sort of Western sense, like in the Western ear, sounds consonant. And by the way, I should make that kind of preface, right? Like different cultures have different ideas of what consonant and dissonant is, and certainly, like, this collection was made with a very, very big tint towards Western music. Although I could certainly appreciate how other cultures have different definitions, and that's something, so consonant and dissonant aren't actually, you know, they aren't actually slashes, or it's not as if one is good and bad. It's actually just, it's a technical definition, really. So now, coming to the 0xDJ for Handel. So 0xDJ Handel was basically a computer program that does attempts counterpoint. Now, when you actually think about counterpoint, everything I described to you, it's procedural. Okay. By the way, computer programs love procedures. Computer programs are all about rules. So, counterpoint, I've always felt this. I always had this thing growing up, when I would listen to a lot of the stuff, was uh, this is being played by a machine. I could have sworn, like, when I heard Bach, I thought, the first thing I told my mom was, this is being played by a machine, because it sounds like robotic, but also beautiful. I mean, uh, so so this was really kind of taking borrowing on a very old idea. So I gave this kind of elaborate example to explain how the inspiration came together. So the Handel one, it's very, very major. It's very much on the major scale. I did that. That was done as a deliberate choice, because uh, like, if you listen to the sort of the Messiah oratorio, like the big kind of moments within that, are actually these triumphant kind of build-ups, that and breakdowns based, and I felt the major, to like pitching it on the major scale, would actually kind of be an ode to that kind of triumphant sound that's so reminiscent of Handel's fugal passages. Uh, now, there are a couple of other examples of DJs that like this. So Bach, I'm not going to go into Bach, but Bach too was counterpoint, but I pitched that mostly on notes that are on the minor diatonic, right? So the thing you'll notice here is that a lot of these DJs actually do follow specific rules, right? It's not all random, and that's the point here. Is that a lot of these algorithms always keep the music consonant, right? Consonant by Western music definitions. Uh, and by the way, I use the term consonant kind of more colloquially speaking. There are dissonances within the music, but generally speaking, I just mean to say it doesn't sound like bloops and bloops, as so much generative music suffers from. And I would say this is the one thing that 0xMusic focused. I would say differentiates itself. I dare use that word, differentiates itself from many other generative projects. Is so much of the emphasis on the musical aspects and the mathematics behind keeping things consonant. And that is where, like, the core algorithm, like, it really took years in the making. Sure, I assembled it, but remember how I said I had all these different points in time. I was secretly developing this notation. I was actually working out how you might express uh, passages as recursions, right? How would imitation work, right? So there's a lot to it, right? um, so uh, so this is, I would say, what a lot of the core algorithm does. Just to finish up the answer, so that there are four ones that we know of as of now. So there was DJ Handel. Handel was born on the 23rd of February. Uh, there was Serena, which was inspired by an album by a band I really love called Blue Red. It's a beautiful album called Miseries is a Butterfly. Uh, if you're looking for upbeat kind of music to make your day go by, that's probably not the album for you. But if you don't mind something a little kind of melancholic, nostalgic, and just kind of beautiful sounding, maybe that's the album for you. So but it does sort of really explore these kind of electronic textures, which I really think like layer in, and they cascade into the album, and they really create uh, uh, this kind of electronic landscape, which I think is like juxtaposes really well with the kind of motifs that this specific album chooses. So the Serena on the 15th of March, and then there was a Bach's birthday on the 31st of March. Although I've a small nitpick, Bach's birthday, there is a little bit of debate whether it's the 23rd of March, but we went with the 31st of March. That seems to be the most consensus around that. And then there was also, but by the way, I don't just listen to classical music. I listen to all kinds of music, and I've been listening to a lot of Afro beats. Afro beats have been making a pretty huge kind of presence in mainstream music, and they've been shaping mainstream music. It only felt right to have a DJ that kind of really go with those kind of an Afrobeat style. Uh, and yeah, so DJ Drip, which I believe was playing earlier, actually takes like a lot of influence from like contemporary Afrobeat music, which really it's all about like the rhythm, right? Like there's just so much like syncopation, and it just makes you move, so and yeah, and that specific song, One Dance. I mean, I remember it being pretty inspirational on me. So yeah, so I've spoken a lot on this answer, so I will pause here. But hopefully that answers the first part of the question.
Yeah, that was absolutely great. I mean, so much information. Um, hey, you guys, this is Lone Wick, by the way.
Nice to speak to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, great to finally speak to you. I I'm absolutely just stoked about this project, of course, and it's I'm really excited that you guys actually found me. I discovered you from you guys just adding me on Twitter well before you even dropped the project, and as soon as I read the description, I was immediately excited. Like just I just knew this was something special and unique and something I had to explore, and so I've just been on board, ever since, and recruited all my friends as they started learning more about it. But anyway, I I wanted to I would like to get a little bit more into some details and opinions you guys might have that I've never heard you talk about. But before we do so, I'd like to, you kind of glossed over some of the little features that you get as a holder, such as the Easter egg, where the music plays, or each DJ plays Bach automatically on Bach's birthday. I think that's just such a cool little touch, and that's like fully on chain, and it will just do that forever. Um, could you tell us a little bit more about what you mean when you talk about the like where holders are able to like have a say in some of the creativity? You kind of use it as an instrument with the MIDI stems and stuff like that. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Lone Wake, thanks so much. I mean, when I was talking about our community, you are like you're a perfect example to kind of illustrate the kind of community that we look to build. So I'm thankful to you and to the rest of the 0xMusic family. But yeah, in terms of what we were looking to do, we were looking to do something completely different from what's been done, right? From a music perspective, we wanted to create music that was infinite, that destroyed itself, that actually sounded good, that was based on Western music theory, um, and and we wanted to take things to the next level. We wanted to make sure that the images were also created in real time, or the animation happened in real time rather. um, and we wanted to do something where we took the community on this journey where they, even if they weren't very creative musically, we wanted to kind of nudge them along that path, you know. So just to um, describe more clearly for people that may not be familiar with the project, the project has three phases really. The first phase is where the 0x DJs were born, which is essentially the public mint, which happened on Feb 2nd this year. Phase two has two components. One is where, and phase two basically is where the DJs begin to create uh, infinite music for the world, right? So the first part of this was where we allowed collectors to essentially download the digital sheet music of any song that their NFT created. So if you're a collector and you connect your wallet to 0xmusic.com, you'll automatically see all of the NFTs that you hold, all of the 0x Music NFTs that you hold. You can play the NFTs there, and every song that's played is automatically added to a playlist. Now, on that playlist, you can actually play the song again if you want to. So you can listen to it, and you can also download the MIDI file. And with that MIDI file, you can then change the instruments, change the beats potentially, and really create something where you use the DNA of the algorithm, but layer on your human creativity on top of that, right? So we wanted people to have like a kind of non-scary way of just beginning their journey towards exploring music. And uh, and 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 we're always thrilled when we see people using this feature in ways that we didn't imagine. You know, when somebody uses it as a background score for video games, or they blend two DJs together, or just create something new. It's that's why we built this in.
Amazing. Yeah. Um, so I'd like to get into a little bit more into kind of, I guess, just how some of this really works. I mean, you did give us a lot of details, but one thing that really, I'd like to know, like, so when an Aux DJ or a 0x DJ is creating music, it's creating, the kick drum and the melody and stuff like that. Where is that originating from? Like, I know probably most NFT projects nowadays, music NFTs, are like stem based, like, there's so many all, already written versions of a melody, of a beat, of the chords, things like that. And then basically the algorithm is just putting them together in different permutations. Um, I get the feeling that that's not what 0xMusic does, right?
Yeah, I could explain this in a little bit of detail. So, really, there's two parts to it, right? So, part one is kind of forming the digital sheet music that, for now, let's just say that is going to be played, and I'll explain how it's played. So, really, that's where the kind of music theory and the mathematics kind of goes into it, and that's where I think the algorithm like that took the most time to develop. In all honesty, uh, because getting something sounding compelling when you're writing programs is not easy musically. Like, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that my first ever program that I ever wrote sounded good. It sounded like nonsense, to be to be brutally frank. But so I had to iterate on a lot of these algorithms. Thousands, like thousands is not an exaggeration. Tens of thousands might be an exaggeration, but it's certainly a large number of iterations before and really consciously applying the ideas of music theory, but then kind of applying it in a way that also bodes well with software engineering, right? So just to go into this a little bit more detail, so uh, you know what a lot of music is, when at least when I listen to it, is a dialogue between different pieces, right? So what does that mean? What does it mean to have a dialogue between like drums and let's say a melody, or what does it mean to have a dialogue between two melodies? So and we can sort of borrow upon ideas from again Western classical music. Where and certainly a lot of these fugues, a dialogue was achieved with imitation. So you have a tune and the tune gets imitated, right? And then that imitation then is actually speaking in some sense to the original tune, and that's why we like it, right? We like it because of that familiarity. And if you sort of look at how music has evolved, it has uh, taken on taken this on to a much greater extent. So music today has a lot of repetition, right? And because as human beings, if you think about it, we actually love that. So you think about like a beat that really grooves. It's basically a beat that has that kind of repetition in it, right? If the beat changed every bar, it may not be as catchy. And similarly, a tune, like we like the fact that a verse comes back later, right? It sort of brings the song back to its familiar place. Anyway, I go on this small digression because you wanted to know in a little bit more detail. So a lot of the sort of phase one of the algorithm is actually figuring out that kind of polyphonic dialogue that these different instruments are taking. Because if you look at Sin City, Athena, 420, 420, by the way, was insanely challenging. One of the, like, I would say, hallmark achievements of my life, to quote that, because 420 actually goes into like a lot more dissonance, and I've experimented with dissonance musically speaking, but it's not as easy as it sounds to make it sound good. And by the way, 420, it and what does good even mean, really? But it good to me, so let's just leave it at that. So a lot of it was actually setting up this kind of polyphonic dialogue. That's phase one of the algorithm. Now, phase two of the algorithm, which is sort of the question you were alluding to, is how does this then create sound? And this is where we leverage a little tool called web audio. What is web audio? Web audio is basically a native functionality to most common web browsers. So Chrome, Safari, all of these have this web audio thing. And really all it is sine waves, right? So how do we go from sine waves to the sound you hear? So if you actually think about how sound works, like a lot of like what a kick drum works, it is basically using things like oscillators with a kind of let's call it an ADSR, which is attack, delay, release, and sustain kind of envelope, right? So what we're able to do in a nutshell is we're able to kind of in real time take these sine waves that the like web audio can create and apply these oscillators, apply these kind of envelopes to the sound to create what I guess sounds like a snare drum to you, what sounds like maybe a piano, right? So for some of the for Bach and Handel, we try to approximate a piano sound, but again, these aren't notably they aren't relying on stems. They aren't relying on MP3s, and let's touch upon why really quickly. Why did we go this route? Because we could have actually, had MP3s. So one of the big goals of our project was to be on chain. What does on chain actually mean? So on chain has, depending on who you ask, there's some very various different definitions you'll hear. Uh, but the idea, generally speaking, is that everything for the art is available on the Ethereum blockchain. I think that's the most simple explanation of what on chain is. And 0xMusic achieves that. All of the code needed to run 0xMusic or any of these infinite songs are basically stored on the Ethereum blockchain. So we have methods in our smart contract where you can actually reconstitute the art by sort of calling it, and we have a little instruction manual in one of our Medium articles talking about how you can do exactly that, right? And notably, there's no involvement of a CDN. So what is a CDN? CDN is basically kind of what you would use, like a lot of projects use P4, or P5JS, for example. That's basically calling a centralized server to get the library. We don't use CDNs, right? Everything, and this is important to underscore, like for this to be fully on chain, every line of code will run on the web browser without any third party dependency. And every line of code is available on the Ethereum blockchain. So I just wanted to kind of also highlight why we went the route of web audio as well. Yeah, so I think that that was the second part of the question you asked, which is how do we create the sounds?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for going into depth on that. And I want to get into the weeds all day and learn every detail, but out of respect for some of our listeners, I guess we won't do that. But trying to think of my next question I had for you guys. So when I'm kind of wanting to, see what any listeners, creators, really, musicians, people who might feel inspired by what you guys have done and want to follow in your footsteps and maybe do something like this. It feels pretty elusive still, and I'm curious. It's like if I'm a guitarist and Steve Vai is my favorite guitarist and I want to be just like him, I can get all of his gear. I can learn his, what his pedals are. I can watch him play and mimic it, things like that. I'm curious, is there, well, I guess first of all, like what elements do you need to really get into this? Is there a ton of knowledge? Is it really mostly just music theory and coding knowledge, or do you think there's, I'm just curious about what maybe like your setup looks like and things like that.
Yeah, I can take a shot at this answer. I mean, so it's in a nutshell a lot of so I love functional programming. I didn't talk about this too much, but functional programming is basically an area of computer science that deals with basically using functions. So using functions and recursions as a way to represent code. Uh, a lot of this is a confluence of like functional programming ideas. JavaScript has some functional programming. And then I would say also say a good understanding of music theory. And when I say music theory, it's not a theoretical understanding. I would say if you're the sort of person who can, play by ear and stuff like that, that would be way more helpful. Uh, my advice, and since that was in your question, is really focus on the thing that makes you unique, right? Focus on the thing that makes you like the most imperfect is really what is a weird framing, but that's what I would really tell any musician, right? So this is the thing that happens to make me unique, right? I'm a weirdo when it comes to stuff like this. I love music theory, I love functional programming, but that may not be for everyone. And you mentioned you like playing guitar, and I think there's room in Web3 for all kinds of musicians, and you need to find the thing that makes you unique and really double down on the thing that makes you imperfect is really my like one bit of advice I'd give. It's a little abstract. What does that actually look like in terms of, what you release? I think that's what you need to figure out. But stay in your comfort zone, and in fact, like double down on it would be my like 20-foot advice to anyone listening.
I think that's some sound advice for sure. Yeah, so it basically sounds like the answer to that question is it's pretty technical, and it's still definitely not an easy thing to achieve. Like you really have to know quite a bit, and that's your skill sets have really catered to that unique position you put yourself in, and that's just amazing. But yeah, I agree. I think there are just unlimited creative ways that musicians and composers and whether you're a coder or not can get into Web3 and ultimately release unique and fun NFTs and just build their own little ecosystem. Yeah, so I mean, I guess you really don't necessarily need to. Uh-huh.
People can always also build off of other things, like we're seeing like nouns becoming like very popular in Web3, where people are using like the nouns infrastructure. With our project, for example, if you I know like yourself and some of the other community members have set up Twitter accounts or Twitter handles for their 0xMusic NFTs, or even like downloading the MIDI file and then and then doing something more creative with it. Um, so there are always opportunities. I think because we're so early, it sounds a little cliche to say it because uh, we are, but we're early. Everybody is more than happy to kind of help and collaborate. So I think there are opportunities to kind of build off of what other people have built as well. So I think that's something that's probably worth exploring as well. If you're new to the Web3 space, maybe that's kind of lower hanging fruit.
Yeah, I would definitely add to that. I think for musicians, which may have been sort of very question originated, yeah, you use a platform, right? Like don't start learning Solidity to write smart contracts. I mean, feel free to do it. I mean, obviously learn and be curious and so on and so forth. But I just mean, focus. I would just say focus is important if you want to produce, and focusing on the thing that makes like that you're very good at, right? So if it's playing music, yeah, use one of these platforms. Use Sound XYZ. Use, there's quite a few of them now, and there's quite a few Web3 like DAOs. Like there are a lot of people focusing on and getting artists out there. So I think it's a great time to be an artist in the music NFT space. And yeah, just try and fail. Try and fail is what I'll say.
Absolutely, absolutely. Go ahead, B-Ways.
No, I was just going to ask Electric and Crypto Pianist if you guys have 5 more minutes after. I think you're supposed to end in 6 minutes, but if you have 5 more minutes, we can maybe go one more in-depth question, a couple of forward-looking thoughts, and I know there's some questions from the audience as well. So I want to just see what's possible for you guys.
Yeah, no, I can go over.
I can go over too, and I'm sorry I ramble quite a bit with a lot of
No,
these
no.
questions. So. As
we love
Electric
that.
is painfully aware,
I
ramble a lot.
yeah,
No, that's
I
encouraging.
decided before the spaces that I was not going to make fun of you. So, I'm yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
No, well, so okay, we'll go maybe five to max 10 minutes over. So, and people that are in the audience asking to come on, we'll get you on at the end in like 5 to 7 minutes or so. I know Wake, you wanted to probably follow up on some of the previous discussion as well.
Yeah, I mean, you basically answered a lot of my thoughts. I guess one of my questions was relating to kind of where this, I see this kind of thing very much being a big part of the future of music. Um, you know, as AI becomes more a part of our culture and robots and things like that, it's like we're going to have these essentially robots performing for us, and it'll look a lot different from what something like Spotify looks like now. And in that regard, I've talked about that a little bit to some of my friends who are pure, kind of purists when it comes to being an instrumentalist and a performing musician. And I get a lot of pushback and a little bit of a fear, um, on like what this means for them. Like, does this take what few jobs I have already away? Is this really like expressive? Like, can you, doesn't this take the human expression out of it? The human feel out of it? And I definitely have my opinion on that, but I'm curious to see if you have anything to say about that, either one of you.
I could take a stab at it initially. The one thing I'll say is that generative music, AI, and all this kind of technology, it's just a tool, right? Ultimately, music is by humans for humans. I think that's the key thing. Like 0xMusic would not have been successful, I think, if if we just created blips and bloops that weren't interesting to listen to, right? It's the fact that uh, our community was able to kind of emote to the songs and actually found it kind of compelling and beautiful in some way. And by the way, it may sound like the computer is creating all the sounds, but you know uh, it took a lot of pain for me to code it, right? And there was a real human, namely me. I promise you, I'm a human. I'm not an AI. You know, I mean, it's possible in some dystopian future. You know, you don't know if you're talking to a human or a or a machine in a Twitter space, but at least as of right now, I'm a human. I promise. If I don't know how I prove I'm a human. I suppose it's sort of like the Turing test all over again. But I'm human, I promise. And I wrote this thing, and it was meant for other people. So really, I think that's the key thing here is like we're just now able to start using technology uh, to like in ways we weren't able to in Web 2, right? And the technology is really like ultimately music is going to be the biggest winner because when you think about all the sort of limitations in Web 2, I mean, a lot is said about the kind of settlement layer piece where it's hard to kind of pay people and things like that. But even in terms of the tech, like that's actually used to create the music, like that, there's a very, very big limitation there in Web 2, right? Like just in terms of storage and other things. And what this is going to allow, I think, is like allow a world of creating, and this is, by the way, 0xMusic's vision, and I'll let Electric actually touch upon this a little bit as well after me. But it is to be able to create that kind of a personalized uh, experience. I don't know if Electric, you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, I think I think you explained it really well. I mean, I just to um, kind of elaborate on that. I don't see it as a zero sum game necessarily, Lonewick. You know, where if you are a traditional musician, that this is going to cut into the pie. I really think this is going to complement existing musicians, and it's really going to expand the pie. You know, just because one person listens to algorithmically created music doesn't mean that they're not going to listen to other different types of music, right? Like we listen to Afrobeats and we listen to Bach and Handel, right? You can have multiple interests. So I think that's one thing that's important to remember is that there is going to be space for everyone. And also the other thing to note is it what we're doing is a different form of art as well. Like we say musicians are artists, and they create art by performing. The Here we're creating art through the algorithm, right? So this is a form of art as well, and I think there will be an appreciation and an understanding that this is a different art form, right? Now, in addition to that, what we're doing in addition to creating art, like our vision is to really allow people to experience music in a different way compared to what's been done till today, right? So, like, imagine listening to the song, listening to a song, either by yourself or with a group, and you know that that song has never been heard by anybody ever before, and after you hear it, it'll never be heard by anybody ever again, right? Uh, j- just just think about that hyper personalized listening experience that you can have either by yourself or share with a group, um, and really connect with both the members of the group and the music at that point in time. So we think this way of listening to music has not been done, and we see a world where we're essentially creating a new way for people to actually experience music.
That's awesome, and actually leads to kind of overall general question I had on kind of music NFTs from your perspective. In that people throw out the word music NFTs quite a lot, but there's so many nuances right in this space. Like you have generative music, very creative, and also kind of intellectually challenging, like you build, and some others in the space. Then you obviously have the kind of Spotify killers who try to build a platform where users can, in a true Web3 fashion again, right, share in the royalties that the platform generates, like kind of an audience type project. And then you have projects like Royal who are essentially NFTing tracks, right, existing normal songs from popular artists. So I'm curious how you think about kind of segmenting the music NFT space from your perspective, and then obviously kind of clear which segment you want to focus on, but curious about your ambitions as well. I think I heard you say in the past that you want to be the pioneers in generative music, right? So I'm not sure if you have any other kind of plans that you want to talk about here, we would love to set aside maybe 5 minutes on those more general and forward-looking thoughts too.
Yeah. So I mean, like like you said, there's so many different parts of the music industry that are being disintermediated by Web3. Uh, like you said, from the distribution side, from the production side, from like the community building side, from the royalties, from the creation side, like we're doing. I think there's so many different players, and each of which, is going to disintermediate some legacy way of doing things, which was ultimately not fair to the artist. So, really excited about where the space is heading. Now, in terms of where we are, really our goal is to be an elite uh, generative music brand in the future, right? And I think there will be people that will kind of expand upon this and maybe find a new way to create real time generative music, and all of that will kind of further the space. But we want to be one of the early pioneers in this new way to kind of experience music. Now, without giving away too much, there are definitely plans for the future. The music might sound a little bit different, um, but yeah, and like we said, holders of the Genesis collection will always have like a front row seat, and will always be kind of treated well by us, because we know that this is where we started. And I, without kind of disclosing too much, I just want to say that we do have pretty big plans, and we're excited to take the 0xMusic fam on the journey with us.
Awesome. Yeah, I cannot wait to see what you guys are going to build. It's going to be exciting. And one thing I will say, like maybe we can open the floor for some questions here. But when I attended the June 19th event in New York, I didn't realize until half an hour into the event that every second or third song was actually an 0xMusic DJ playing, which I think says something about how well it kind of integrates with a real environment. It's not just kind of generative music that doesn't sound like anything, right? It actually works, which I was very impressed to see myself not noticing that. It's probably 5-6 beers in, so that might have contributed, but it was still impressive in my opinion. So I think everyone should definitely check it out. And certainly on the outro here after the questions, where we're going to play another 0x DJ as well, so people have a sense of what's going on. So maybe unless Wiki wanted to ask a final question, I also want to, if anyone wants to come up, please just request and we can bring you up.
No, let's bring up some listeners. Person. Yeah.
There was one person earlier, but I think they dropped in the meantime, unfortunately. We'll give it like 30 seconds. Cool. And if not, I think in the meantime, probably a good moment, like if you want to share, guys, as to where people should find you. I think it's pretty obvious when you listen to the spaces here. People can click on your names and find the link to 0xMusic. But if this ever is published on a different medium, what is the best way for people to find you and reach out?
Yeah, so our website is 0xmusic.com. You can definitely go there to learn more about us. Our Twitter handle is 0x_music. You can there, and you can always find us on Discord as well, to communicate with us. And from the website, you can go to all of these locations. Our Genesis collection is sold out, but if you're interested in potentially purchasing an NFT, you can go to OpenSea and find us. You can just
I think everyone might be muted here.
It says everyone is muted.
Oh,
I think we're good again. I don't know what happened there.
Okay, I don't know how how long I waxed on just speaking to myself.
I think we heard all the key. I think we all heard all the key ways of contacting you.
Okay.
And we can
Perfect.
definitely share it in. We can definitely share it in a summary with the
Perfect.
face as well.
Perfect.
We just have one question I think coming in here from killernews.eth. So feel free to unmute and ask the question. We have a couple, maybe 1 or 2 minutes left here.
Sure, thanks. Amazing space. Big fan, electric crypto pianist. I've been in the 0xMusic fam since the beginning. I was just wondering when is 0x Moments coming out for Sin City, man.
That's a loaded question. Soon, TM.
I can confirm that it is coming out. Does that help?
Yeah. No, it'll. Yeah, we're working on some moments actually. So they will come over the course of the year. And thanks again for being a part of the fam.
Awesome, thanks, man.
Thanks for the question. You can always shoot your shot, right? You never know. But that was a loaded one for sure. Okay, cool. If nothing else, I think just thanks again, both of you, for joining us on the spaces. We'll distribute again for people to listen to it afterwards. Really appreciate you taking the time, even more than planned. Actually, I think we still have like dozens of questions that we had in preparation, so which we didn't get to. So we might have to do like a second session in a few months' time or so when there's more developments, and that would be awesome as well. We look forward to reconnecting.
Yeah. Thank you, guys, and we're always available to speak to you guys.
Yeah, same here. If you have any questions, like just shoot me a Twitter DM or just find me on Discord. I'm happy to help and advise in any way. And yeah, thank you for being such pillars in our community.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, you guys. And that's just another way you guys are just amazing. You're so willing to help and talk with everyone and so responsive. So really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome, guys. We'll probably keep it going for 2 minutes so we play one of the OA's DJs. Feel free to stay or to go whenever you please. Have a great one, guys.